Africa has a huge but stealth neo-colonial problem. This problem keeps Western countries and Western elites filthy rich, while doing very little for the continent of Africa itself. However, in the last month, many African leaders have started talking, signing, and putting together deals that perpetuate this problem. As much as we talk about African resources, things in the ground that we can dig up, this resource is of a different kind, but just as powerful, and has the ability to transform the economies of Africa into a glorious future that all Africans and African diaspora should be desiring. In this video, I'm going to break down the stealth misconceptions, numbers, stats, and issues surrounding human resource flight out of Africa. Until I started researching, I did not realize the extent of the problem. I promise you what I've uncovered is going to make you challenge the way you think about leaving the continent of Africa for better opportunities. If you like the sound of that, stay tuned. So I've championed, and many of us have championed, the growing perception and the growing action being taken by many leaders across Africa to not allow raw resources to leave the continent. We've seen it in Botswana with the president banning the export of raw diamonds. We've seen it in Ghana and Togo with cocoa, in Burkina Faso with Ibrahim Traore and gold, in Niger with President Chiani and uranium. When it comes to the human resource, the people of Africa that are looking for greater opportunities outside the continent of Africa, a counter logic is applied, and we celebrate deals being signed between countries allowing our most educated individuals to go and work abroad. This subject in particular touches me personally because my family is spread across 2 continents. I myself am the product of a family that left Africa to find better opportunity in the United Kingdom. And now as an adult, I've returned, and being on the continent has given me a new perspective on what Africa should be, could be, and how we should work towards that better future. I'm sure you've already got your thoughts around this, but give me a minute and let me explain comprehensively what I'm talking about.
Picture this. African leaders give fiery speeches about how we must stop exporting our raw gold, oil, and diamonds, only to buy back finished products at 10 times the price. They call it economic colonialism. They demand we add value to our resources before selling them. The crowd cheers. The message is clear. Africa must control its own wealth. But here's the twist that nobody wants to talk about. While we're protecting our gold and oil, we're literally shipping out our most valuable resource of all, our people. And not just any people. We're exporting our brightest minds, our most skilled workers, and our future leaders. Then we celebrate it as an opportunity. Let me break down the numbers that will shock you. Nigeria just signed a deal to send 360,000 workers to Greece. Kenya wants to export 1 million workers every single year. Ghana is shipping workers to the UAE. South Africa is sending skilled workers to Europe under a $5 billion EU deal. But here's what makes this even more twisted. These aren't just any workers. We're talking about doctors, engineers, nurses, teachers, tech experts, people that cost Nigeria hundreds of thousands of dollars to educate, people that our economy desperately needs, people that could build the next generation of African businesses, hospitals, and innovations. Instead, we train them for free, then hand them over to Europe and America. It's like mining gold, refining it, then giving it away for the price of raw ore. The remittance numbers look impressive on paper. Africans working abroad send back $54 billion from America alone, another $40 billion from Europe. Politicians love these numbers. They make speeches about how our diaspora is contributing to development. But let's do some real math. Nigeria has lost 760,000 skilled workers to America alone. If each worker represents a $50,000 education investment, that's $38 billion in human capital that Nigeria gave away for free. And that's just to one country. Kenya is planning to export 1 million workers annually. At current education costs, that's roughly $25 billion worth of human investment leaving the country every single year. Kenya's entire annual budget is $30 billion. They're literally giving away almost their entire budget's worth of trained human capital. Meanwhile, what are these receiving countries getting? Greece gets to fill 360,000 job positions without spending a cent on education or training. They get doctors who can work immediately, engineers who can build immediately, teachers who can teach immediately, all for the cost of a work visa. It's the perfect scam. Europe and America get African-trained professionals at discount prices. They fill their labor shortages without investing in their own people's education. They get the benefit of decades of African investment in human development. And what does Africa get? We get remittances. Money sent home by workers who are making other countries rich with their skills. This is where the psychology gets really twisted. Every success story of an African making it big in London, New York, or Dubai becomes a message to young Africans that success means leaving Africa. The brain drain becomes a cultural expectation. Could we walk through any university in Lagos, Nairobi, or Accra, ask students about their 5-year plans? The majority will tell you they want to migrate. They see local opportunities as temporary. The real goal is always elsewhere. We've created a generation that views Africa as a launching pad, not a destination. Smart young Africans study hard not to build Nigeria or Kenya, but to qualify for visas to America and Europe. The numbers on this are devastating. Nigeria loses 15,000 doctors annually to emigration. That's more doctors than some countries graduate in a decade. These doctors spent years training in Nigerian medical schools, learning in Nigerian hospitals, using Nigerian resources. Then they take those skills to treat patients in London and New York. To put this in perspective, Nigeria spends roughly $200,000 training each doctor through medical school, residency, and specialization. That's $3 billion worth of medical training walking out of the country every single year. Meanwhile, the UK saves $300,000 per doctor by not training them domestically. Nigeria is essentially subsidizing Britain's healthcare system. Meanwhile, Nigeria has one of the worst doctor-to-patient ratios in the world. We have areas where millions of people share one doctor. But instead of addressing this shortage by keeping our trained doctors, we celebrate when they get jobs abroad. Ghana tells a similar story. The country graduates about 200 doctors annually, but loses 180 of them to emigration within 5 years. That's a 90% loss rate. Ghana's medical schools have become training centers for American and British hospitals. The engineering numbers are just as bad. Nigeria trains thousands of engineers every year. Most of them end up building infrastructure in other countries while Nigerian infrastructure crumbles. We have Nigerian engineers designing smart cities in Dubai while Nigerian cities lack basic electricity. South Africa produces some of the world's best mining engineers, thanks to decades of experience with complex deep shaft mining. These engineers now optimize mining operations in Australia, Canada, and Chile. Meanwhile, South African mines struggle with aging infrastructure and declining productivity because their best engineers work elsewhere. This brain drain creates a vicious cycle. As skilled professionals leave, the quality of local institutions drops. Hospitals run by fewer doctors provide worse care. Schools run by fewer qualified teachers produce weaker students. Infrastructure projects led by fewer experienced engineers fail more often. This makes even more young people want to leave. They look around and see declining institutions, failing infrastructure, overwhelmed hospitals. The logical conclusion is that success requires escape. But here's what's really sinister about this system. The receiving countries aren't passive beneficiaries. They actively recruit African talent through sophisticated programs designed to extract exactly what they need. McKinsey and Company, the global consulting firm, runs targeted recruitment programs in Nigerian universities. They identify the brightest business students and offer them positions in London and New York, with visa sponsorship included. These students never get to apply their analytical skills to Nigerian business problems. German pharmaceutical companies recruit directly from Ethiopian and Kenyan medical schools. They offer research positions that come with European residency. These are the same medical researchers who could be developing treatments for tropical diseases that affect millions of Africans. Canadian tech companies have established recruitment offices in Lagos, Cape Town, and Nairobi. They identify software developers and offer immigration pathways through skilled worker programs. These developers end up building apps for Canadian consumers instead of solving African technology challenges. These aren't accidental policies, they're strategic programs designed to solve rich countries' problems using African resources. Germany has an aging population and needs young workers. Instead of investing in their own young people's education, they recruit from Africa. Canada needs healthcare workers, but doesn't want to expand medical schools. Instead, they take doctors that Africa trained. It's resource extraction with a college degree. The historical parallels are striking. During colonial times, European powers extracted African labor for plantations and mines. Young African men were taken from their communities to work in gold mines in South Africa, cocoa plantations in Ghana, and copper mines in Zambia. The wealth they created stayed in European hands. Today's system works the same way, but with better marketing. Instead of forced labor, we have visa programs. Instead of plantations, we have hospitals and tech companies. Instead of colonial administrators, we have immigration lawyers. But the result is identical: African human resources creating wealth for other continents. The economic impact goes beyond just lost human capital. When a country's best minds leave, innovation stops, entrepreneurship declines, local businesses struggle to find skilled workers. This keeps African economies dependent on exporting raw materials because we lack the human capital to add value. Nigeria exports crude oil and imports refined petroleum. We have petroleum engineers, but they're working for ExxonMobil in Texas, not building refineries in Port Harcourt. We have chemical engineers working for Shell in the Netherlands, not developing petrochemical industries in Warri. Kenya exports coffee beans and imports processed coffee. We have agricultural scientists, but they're researching in Iowa, not improving farming in Nakuru. We have food technologists working for Nestle in Switzerland, not developing food processing plants in Nairobi. Ethiopia exports raw leather and imports leather goods. We have materials engineers working for luxury brands in Italy, not developing tanneries in Addis Ababa. The pattern repeats across every sector and every country. This is the cruel irony. We refuse to export raw materials because we know it keeps us poor. But we happily export raw talent, which keeps us even poorer. The dependency this creates is psychological as much as economic. When your best and brightest leave, society starts believing that excellence requires exodus. Parents save money not to start businesses locally, but to send their children abroad. University students study not to solve local problems, but to qualify for foreign opportunities. This mindset becomes self-fulfilling. If everyone that is talented leaves, local institutions really do become second-rate. If all the smart money goes abroad, local businesses really do struggle. If every innovative person emigrates, the country really does fall behind in technology and development. The generational impact compounds the problem. Children of immigrants grow up in foreign countries, educated in foreign systems, loyal to foreign institutions. They might visit Africa, but they don't build Africa. Their skills, networks, and capital develop other economies. Second-generation African immigrants in America are some of the highest performing demographics in education and income. These are people with African DNA and African work ethic, but their success builds American power, not African power. Their children will be even more disconnected from Africa. Meanwhile, the children left behind in Africa grow up with absent parents, often raised by grandparents or relatives. They receive money from abroad, but they miss the daily presence, guidance, and mentorship that builds strong communities. Many develop their own dreams of escape, perpetuating the cycle. The receiving countries understand this perfectly. They don't want Africa to develop into competition. They want Africa to remain a source of raw materials and cheap labor. The labor export programs serve this goal perfectly. They drain Africa of the human resources needed for development while solving rich countries' demographic and skills problems. Look at the specific deals being made. Nigeria sends 360,000 workers to Greece, but Greece doesn't send 360,000 workers to Nigeria. Kenya exports 1 million workers annually, but imports 0 workers from Europe. These aren't equal exchanges, they're one-way extractions. The visa requirements themselves reveal the power imbalance. An African doctor needs months of paperwork, fees, examinations, and interviews to work in Europe. A European doctor can work in most African countries with minimal requirements. The system is designed to facilitate flow in one direction only. The financial flows reveal the true nature of these relationships. African workers abroad earn about $2 trillion annually. They send back about 100 billion in remittances. That means $1.9 trillion worth of African productivity stays in foreign economies. It builds foreign cities, pays foreign taxes, and grows foreign GDP. Those $1.9 trillion represent hospitals that won't be built in Africa, schools that won't be constructed, businesses that won't be started, innovations that won't be developed. It's the opportunity cost of the brain drain. But the impact goes deeper than economics. When a society's role models are people who succeeded by leaving, it creates a culture of defeat. Young people grow up believing their homeland is incapable of providing opportunity. They see success and departure as synonymous. This cultural programming starts early. African children learn that the ultimate achievement is a visa to America or Europe. Movies, music, and social media reinforce this message. The successful African is the one who escaped Africa. Nollywood movies often feature characters whose greatest achievement is traveling abroad. Afrobeat songs celebrate getting visas and living in foreign cities. Social media influencers gain followers by showcasing their lives in Western countries. The message is consistent. Real success happens elsewhere. This creates what psychologists call learned helplessness on a continental scale. If everyone believes Africa can't provide opportunities, then people stop trying to create opportunities in Africa. If everyone believes success requires leaving, then nobody invests in staying. The migration itself reinforces these beliefs. When talented people leave, they take their energy, ideas, and networks with them. The local ecosystem becomes less vibrant, less connected, less innovative. This makes the remaining people even more convinced that departure is necessary for success. Meanwhile, the receiving countries benefit from what economists call positive selection. They get Africa's most ambitious, most educated, most capable people. These individuals often become highly successful in their new countries, creating more wealth, more innovation, and more opportunity for their adopted nations. The compounding effects are massive. One Nigerian doctor working in London might train dozens of other doctors during her career. Those are doctors who could have been trained in Nigeria, treating Nigerian patients. Instead, they're expanding Britain's medical capacity. One Kenyan engineer working in Canada might design infrastructure that serves millions of people over decades. That infrastructure could have been built in Kenya, serving Kenyan people. Instead, it's expanding Canada's economic capacity. One Ethiopian software developer working in Silicon Valley might create applications used by millions globally. That innovation could have emerged from Addis Ababa, putting Ethiopia on the technology map. Instead, it adds to America's dominance in the digital economy. This is how the brain drain becomes a perpetual wealth transfer. African investment in human development becomes Western wealth creation. The more successful our immigrants become, the more wealth they generate for other countries instead of for Africa. The skills gap this creates at home becomes self-perpetuating. African companies can't compete globally because they lack the human capital. This makes them less attractive to talented Africans who prefer to work for global companies in other countries. The local private sector remains weak, creating fewer opportunities, driving more emigration. African universities struggle to retain top faculty because academics can earn more abroad. This reduces the quality of education, making local degrees less competitive globally. Students then seek education abroad, often staying in those countries after graduation. African hospitals can't provide world-class care because they lack specialists. This creates a medical tourism industry where wealthy Africans travel abroad for treatment, sending more money out of the continent. It also makes medicine less attractive to young Africans who want to practice at the highest levels. The technology sector shows this pattern clearly. Africa has some brilliant programmers, but most work remotely for American companies or emigrate to Silicon Valley. Local tech ecosystems remain underdeveloped because the best talent is focused elsewhere. This keeps African countries dependent on foreign technology instead of developing indigenous innovation capacity. Even when African entrepreneurs succeed locally, they often move their companies to global financial centers. Nigerian fintech companies relocate to London. Kenyan startups incorporate in Delaware. South African businesses list on foreign stock exchanges. The value creation happens in Africa, but the wealth accumulation happens elsewhere. The solutions exist, but they require fundamental changes in how African governments think about development. First, we need to stop celebrating brain drain as opportunity. Sending our best people abroad is not success, it's failure. It's a failure to create local opportunities worthy of our best people. The mindset shift has to start with leadership. When presidents brag about how many of their citizens work abroad, they're advertising failure. When education ministers celebrate students getting foreign scholarships, they're admitting their local universities aren't good enough. When health ministers don't address doctor emigration, they're accepting that their healthcare systems will remain weak. Second, we need policies that make staying competitive with leaving. This means creating economic zones with international level opportunities. It means building institutions that can compete with Harvard and Oxford. It means developing business environments that can compete with Silicon Valley and London's financial district. Singapore provides a model. In the 1960s, it was losing talent to Britain and America. The government created policies to make staying attractive. World-class education, business-friendly regulations, competitive salaries, excellent infrastructure. Within 2 decades, Singapore became a destination for global talent instead of a source of emigrants. Ireland followed a similar path. In the 1980s, it was losing educated workers to America and Britain. The government invested heavily in education, created tax incentives for businesses, and built technology infrastructure. Today, Ireland attracts workers from around the world, including many returning immigrants. South Korea transformed from a country that sent workers to Germany in the 1960s to a destination for global talent today. The key was massive investment in education, research and development, and creating globally competitive companies like Samsung and Hyundai. Third, we need to tax emigration the same way we tax resource extraction. If a mining company takes copper from Zambia, they pay taxes and royalties. If Europe takes a doctor from Zambia, they should pay the equivalent of that doctor's education costs, plus a premium for the lost contribution to Zambian society. The Philippines pioneered this approach with their Overseas Employment Administration. Filipino workers abroad pay fees that fund development projects at home. The money builds infrastructure, supports education, and creates local opportunities. It's not perfect, but it creates a mechanism for emigration to contribute to domestic development. Some countries have implemented exit taxes for skilled workers. India charges fees for professionals who emigrate within 5 years of graduation. The money funds scholarships for students who commit to working locally. It creates incentives to stay while generating resources for development. Fourth, we need return incentives that are stronger than departure incentives. This means creating fast-track paths for immigrants who return with skills and capital. It means offering land, tax breaks, and government contracts to diaspora entrepreneurs who invest or could locally. Rwanda has created programs specifically for returnees. Diaspora Rwandans who invest in the country receive tax holidays, land grants, and streamlined business registration. Many successful Rwandans abroad have returned to start businesses bringing capital, skills, and international networks. Ghana's Year of Return initiative successfully attracted diaspora investment and permanent returns. The government simplified visa processes, offered citizenship pathways, and created investment incentives. Many Ghanaians living abroad relocated permanently, bringing families and businesses with them. Fifth, we need to end the visa worship that dominates African culture. Success should be measured by contribution to African development, not by passport stamps. We need to celebrate the entrepreneurs building in Lagos as much as the ones succeeding in London. This requires changing the narrative in media, education, and popular culture. Schools should teach about African innovators and entrepreneurs, not just Western ones. Movies should feature characters who achieve success by solving African problems. Music should celebrate local achievement, not just foreign lifestyles. The infrastructure for these solutions already exists in many African countries. Nigeria has world-class universities like Obafemi Awolowo University. Kenya has innovative financial technology companies like M-Pesa. South Africa has advanced mining and manufacturing capabilities. What's missing is the human capital to fully utilize this infrastructure. We're sending our best engineers to build other countries' infrastructure while ours remains underdeveloped. We're sending our best doctors to treat other countries' patients while ours remain underserved. The technology sector provides the clearest example of lost potential. Africa has produced brilliant programmers who created widely used software. But most of this innovation happens in Silicon Valley, not in African tech hubs. African programming talent builds American platforms instead of African solutions. Imagine if all the Africans working at Google, Microsoft, and Facebook were building competing platforms in Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town. African users wouldn't be dependent on American technology. African data wouldn't flow to American servers. African digital advertising money wouldn't go to American companies. The financial sector shows similar patterns. African economists and analysts working on Wall Street and in London understand global markets intimately. They could build world-class African financial institutions that compete globally. Instead, African capital markets remain underdeveloped while African expertise builds foreign financial power. Healthcare presents the starkest example. African doctors working in American and European hospitals have solved complex medical problems and developed innovative treatments. This expertise could revolutionize African healthcare, addressing diseases that primarily affect African populations. Instead, it serves populations that already have access to quality healthcare. The irony is that many African immigrants become more successful abroad than they could have at home. But this success rarely translates back to African development. A Nigerian running $1 billion company in America creates American jobs, pays American taxes, and solves American problems. The same person running a $1 billion company in Nigeria would create Nigerian jobs, pay Nigerian taxes, and solve Nigerian problems. The multiplier effects of keeping talent local are enormous. Every skilled professional who stays creates opportunities for others. Every successful local business creates demand for local suppliers. Every innovation developed locally creates local intellectual property and local competitive advantages. But the current system does the opposite. Every talented person who leaves reduces local capacity. Every successful immigrant becomes proof that success requires departure. Every dollar earned abroad is a dollar not earned locally. The receiving countries understand these dynamics perfectly. They design immigration policies to attract exactly the people Africa needs most. They offer opportunities specifically calibrated to be more attractive than local alternatives. They create path dependencies that make return difficult, even for those who want to come back. This is strategic. Rich countries face demographic challenges, aging populations, declining birth rates, skills shortages. Instead of solving these problems by investing in their own societies, they solve them by importing solutions from other countries. It's cheaper and more efficient than domestic investment in education and human development. The African response has been to facilitate this extraction. We compete to provide workers to foreign economies. We measure success by how many of our people get visas, not by how many opportunities we create locally. We celebrate remittances instead of building local productivity. This mentality needs to change completely. The goal should not be to export workers, but to import opportunities. Instead of sending our people to where the jobs are, we should be bringing the jobs to where our people are. The technology exists to make this possible. Remote work, digital platforms, and global connectivity mean that many high-value jobs can be performed from anywhere. But instead of leveraging this to keep talent local, we use it to make emigration easier. African governments could create digital economic zones that compete directly with Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and London's financial district. They could offer tax incentives, infrastructure, and regular entry environments that attract international business while keeping African talent at home. The diaspora could be part of this solution instead of part of the problem. Instead of permanent emigration, we could create circular migration systems where people gain international experience and then return to apply those skills locally. Instead of remittances, we could create diaspora investment funds that build African businesses and create African jobs. The cultural change is as important as the policy change. We need to stop teaching our children that success means leaving Africa. We need to start teaching them that success means making Africa better. We need to celebrate the builders, not just the escapers. This isn't about closing borders or stopping all migration. It's about changing the terms of engagement. Instead of one-way extraction, we need reciprocal exchange. Instead of brain drain, we need brain circulation. Instead of dependency, we need sovereignty. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every talented person who leaves makes it harder for the ones who stay. Every dollar earned abroad is a dollar that could have been earned locally. But every person who chooses to stay and build creates a foundation for others to stay and build. Every local success story reduces the pressure to leave. Every thriving African business proves that success is possible at home. The choice is ours. We can continue shipping our most valuable resource to other countries while complaining about their success. Or we can start treating human capital the same way we treat natural resources, as something too valuable to export raw. The same energy that goes into protecting our gold and oil needs to go into protecting our people. The same passion that fights economic colonialism needs to fight brain drain. We can be a continent that develops other continents' economies with our talent, or we can be a continent that develops its own economy with its own talent. We can be a source of human resources for others, or we can be a destination for human resources ourselves. The skills, knowledge, and creativity exist within Africa to build world-class economies, institutions, and opportunities. The question is whether we'll use them for African development or give them away to develop other continents. The answer to that question will determine whether Africa becomes truly independent or remains permanently dependent, whether we become truly sovereign or remain permanently subordinate. whether we build our own future or continue building other people's futures. The time to choose is now. The resources to succeed are here. The only question is whether we have the wisdom to keep them and the courage to use them for ourselves.
I'm sure many of you have thoughts and comments about this information out there. Perhaps you want to leave the continent. Perhaps you're a diaspora outside of the continent. And perhaps you think about what has been left behind as you've gained those better opportunities. Perhaps you're someone out there that still supports the idea of finding better opportunities elsewhere outside of the continent. Obviously, for me, I've done the reverse. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments. I'm sure this is a very polarizing subject for many, but if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words "a better African future" in the comments? It lets me know that you've watched the video to the end, you support the channel, and you want me to keep doing what I'm doing. Thank you so much for watching the video today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.